Welcome back to the Devlogs. So excited to continue to show y'all what I've been up to and hear feedback on how to make the game that much better. In this devlog, I want to cover my first iteration of the Colony AI, how the workers carry out their tasks to create this living and breathing community, all working towards survival. I'm so proud of these little guys hard at work, bringing my game to life. Small update before that, I've recently been working with a scenery artist to update the tile set of my game. His name's Lawric, and he is incredibly talented and deserves your attention if you have any need for his amazing artwork. I'll make sure to link him in the description. Looking at this, you can tell that I'm still trying to decide on a depth sorting system, so bear with me on how some of the trees and other objects look out of place. I've tried a few and just haven't been satisfied with the results, but I'm getting sidetracked. Let's talk about worker AI. My workers are essentially running a probably more than complicated than it needs to be type of state machine. I say that because I haven't had time to go back and clean up a lot of the code, and so my stuff looks kinda gross and an absolute mess. But the gist of how my system works is this. All workers start out being spawned in by a house. The amount of baby workers spawned per house is dependent on the level of the house. Higher level house, more babies. Once fully grown, an adult worker awaits job placement at the town hall. Once assigned to a job, the worker will have access to all the state machines associated with that job until he is unassigned, where he will then return to the town hall and await reassignment. Job growth for these guys has never been higher. They could be a resource gatherer, such as a miner gathering ores and stone, a woodcutter gathering various forms of lumber and milling them into useful planks, or a farmer gathering different crops and livestock. Gathering isn't their calling. They can refine these resources as a smelter, turning ores into metal bars, or as a baker, cooking your raw foods into much more efficient meals. Your worker can also craft weapons and armor as a blacksmith, carve bows as a fletcher, or build buildings as a builder. Finally, there will always be a need for a worker to become a transporter, moving about all of these resources throughout the colony, making sure everyone has what they need. While workers can be reassigned to other jobs, the more time a worker spends at one job, the more they will improve. For gatherers, they can become faster and have a higher chance for more rare resources. For refiners, faster with less necessary raw materials. For crafters, knowledge of more advanced crafting recipes, things like that. This system was designed as an incentive to keep workers alive, and in times of crisis, allow for a blacksmith to temporarily become a woodcutter until the colony stabilizes. This next part isn't implemented yet, as I'm waiting on some enemies and other resources, but once you have harvested all of the world's original materials, you're going to need to replace them, and the only way to get more is from random events that will have resources kind of spawn about the map, or they can be generated by your very resource buildings. However, the land you trample on will not appreciate bending its energy to your will, and so you will have to defeat the natural elements protecting these resources before you may start gathering them up. And so it may be smarter to have your resource buildings outside of your main walls, away from all those other important structures and buildings, because you're going to have enemies just kind of spawn all around it, so keep them away so that you can't get your other stuff destroyed as well. This is also when your military comes in, so soldiers are going to require weapons and armor to be created. Once assigned as a soldier, unlike the worker, there's no going back. Soldiers will need to have their weapons and armor repaired or risk fighting naked against the hordes of enemies that will going to be at your gate. A constant flow of weapons, armor, and food will also be necessary for your soldiers to maintain their effectiveness and be effective fighters. Similar to the workers though, soldiers who live a long time can become veterans, gaining passive strength increases along with the special ability. Keeping your soldiers alive will be the key to defending your colony from armies of the continent, along with strong walls and towers to defend your vital structures. The demo of what I'm showing you in the background during all of this was not very easy to create. There was a lot of things that I was doing for the first time. Mostly these complex state machines, getting the worker AIs to work together and communicate with each other was something that I've never done before, along with just the RTS elements in general are also things that I just haven't worked on before. You know, one thing that I thought was going to be a lot easier but ended up being a whole task that I'm not finished with is the unit management when soldiers are moving in formation. Getting them to go in a line and not just walk all over each other has been quite the process, but I think I'm starting to figure it out, and you can kind of see just where I am right now. I can get them to kind of organize themselves in rows and columns, but I'm just trying to make it a little more dynamic and a little more complex. Some other struggles I had was with the farmer building. Building gave me so much trouble, just working with the tile sets and having the tile sets be actual instances that can be manipulated and changed without being objects, because it's a lot cheaper in terms of performance and frame rates to work with tile sets than to work with objects when you're trying to do something like just make the background a soil tile instead of a grass tile. And so it was really big challenge for me to get the farmer building to be able to communicate with the tile map and have the tiles change and be dependent upon what the farm needs, storing that in grids and having the farmer be able to access all of it. It was a whole challenge that I just haven't come across before, and I hadn't seen a lot of great tutorials for. The one that I had to base it off of was a Shaun Spalding's tile collision based tutorial that I definitely took as inspiration, but I had to do quite a bit of a derivative to get to where I needed it to be for this specific task. Another thing I'm quite proud of is the recipe system I made for just the workers right now. There are recipes that are stored for each of the workers depending on what their job is. And so a smelter will be able to detect the recipe for, in my case, the most common version of the metal ore being russet. So they can detect a russet ore recipe and make a russet bar if they have the necessary ingredients. Same with bright steel and all the other ores that are going to be in my game. This whole process also works for the woodcutter, even though that recipe is far more simple than compared to like the sword recipe for the blacksmith and the weaponsmith, how the resources will actually be placed in a certain order within that building and then will be removed and crafted into the actual weapon on that side. Just looks so great to me. I think it looks fantastic, and it's something I'm really proud of. Really, just the whole UI interaction, I think I'm proud of, and something that you wouldn't expect to be proud of. But UI development, especially in GameMaker Studio, is not easy. They don't have very intuitive UI design and UI mechanics that are in like the drag and drop or in tutorials. And so you have to end up using a lot of your own intuition, and I found some amazing UI inventory tutorials from, again, Matharoo GameStation. I can link you his slide menus that look great for the building buttons, and Friendly Cosmonaut, who made this fantastic inventory system for her farming game, which has truly been the backbone, as I'm sure you can tell, of a lot of my inventory system. Essentially what I have is just an extremely modified version of her inventory system for her farming RPG. And so those tutorials have been so helpful in generating and making what I need for my game, because it seems like the tutorials are getting more and more scarce for GameMaker. So I'm just going to keep looking for them and potentially make some myself, as long as I can clean up my code, because my stuff looks gross and I don't think anyone would want to use that. And with that, I'm pretty happy with my first iteration of the worker AI and how the colony is going to interact and work together. The things that I want to get working, obviously, are the resource building, generating the new resources, and having the enemies have to show up with those enemy types functional so that you can fight them and then go and gather those resources. Just as always, if you have any thoughts or opinions on how I think I should change this system, if you like this system, be sure to let me know down below. It's been a pleasure showing you guys off my game, and I hope that you stick with the whole development process and the cycle of this game. So thank you very much for watching.